The ramp slammed down, and everything after that became instinct. I didn't see the bullets. Not at first. I saw what they did. The way Jackson jerked sideways, arms flung out like he was slipping on ice. But he never hit the water. His body was stuck, tangled in the side of the Higgins boat, twitching as blood poured from a hole in his throat the size of my fist. No time to think. No time to scream. Just the sting of seawater rushing up my nose as I hit the surf. The cold hit like a hammer. I wasn't ready for that. None of us were. The Atlantic in June wasn't supposed to feel like this. Like razors down your spine. Like ice water in your lungs. Like death itself was crawling up your legs. My boots filled instantly. My pack dragged me down like a goddamn anchor. I kicked, slipped, sank. Coughed up salt and bile as I surfaced into the roar of machine guns ripping the beach apart. I couldn't hear my thoughts. Couldn't hear anything but the endless tearing sound of MG-42s. Like God himself had picked up a chainsaw and started cutting the world in half. Men screamed all around me. Some high, sharp, panicked. Some low and gurgling, like animals bleeding out in the mud. I tripped over something under the water. I didn't want to know what. My brain said keep moving. Don't look. Don't stop. But I looked anyway. It was Connolly. Or at least the back of his helmet. His face was gone. Blown open like someone had dropped a grenade in his mouth. He stared up at me with nothing left to stare with. I gagged, but I didn't stop. The tide pushed me forward. Or maybe I pushed myself, knee-deep, then waist-deep, then thigh-deep in blood-warm water that smelled like iron and engine oil and burnt flesh. I heard a scream, closer this time. I turned and saw a kid from 3rd Platoon. Freeman, I think. He was on his knees in the surf, both hands clamped over his stomach, and there was something red and shiny slipping between his fingers like ropes, like he was trying to hold his insides in. He didn't make it another second. The next burst caught him in the face. I hit the sand belly first, gasping, my fingers clawing into the wet ground. Someone landed next to me with a splash and a grunt. I turned. Lance Corporal Dunn, bleeding from the shoulder, his helmet missing, eyes wide and wild. "We're sitting ducks here," he shouted, but it was like he was yelling underwater. My ears were ringing from the mortars. We pushed forward together, crawling like animals, the sand soaked and slippery beneath us. Bullets chewing the water, the beach, the men. I passed a rifle floating in the surf, fingers still wrapped around it. No body attached. The bunkers were lit up like the 4th of July. Muzzle flashes like lightning, but there was no storm. Only thunder. Thunder that tore men in half. They weren't shooting at us. They were shooting through us. Dunn grabbed me. "Smoke! Throw the goddamn smoke!" I fumbled for it. Hands shaking like leaves in a storm, pulled the pin with my teeth and lobbed it forward. The wind caught it, spun it sideways, sent it uselessly off course. We cursed, kept moving. Each second felt like hours, the kind of hours that aged you, that hollowed you out from the inside. We finally hit a line of Czech hedgehogs, tank traps rusted and useless, but just tall enough to duck behind. I collapsed behind one, gasping, shaking. The M1 clutched to my chest like a life vest. The kid next to me was crying. Loud. Not just tears. Sobbing. He was no more than 18, maybe less. His helmet too big. His hands bloody. I wanted to say something. Anything. But all I managed was, "You're not alone." He nodded, then puked on his boots. We waited. The sounds never stopped. Bullets snapped over our heads in constant rhythm, like a drummer who hated us. I peered up for half a second, saw a machine gun nest light up and fire. Didn't see who it hit, but the screaming came fast after. I pressed myself lower. Somewhere behind us, the sea was still vomiting out more men. Higgins' boats disgorging bodies into a meat grinder. Some made it to the beach, most didn't. I looked to the side. Dunn was bleeding more now. Pale, breathing heavy. "You hit bad?" I asked. He laughed. A little. "You?" I checked myself. Holes in my uniform. One in the side. But no pain. Not yet. "Just scared," I said. He nodded like that was normal. Because it was. We all were. A sergeant crawled past us, shouting orders. "Push to the shingle. Regroup at the seawall. Go, go, go. We didn't move. We couldn't. Everything hurt. The world was noise and pain and smoke and screams. But then, something changed. A shell landed further back. A Higgins boat took a direct hit, exploded in a spray of fire and limbs. And somehow, in that chaos, in that madness, a sliver of silence slipped in. I heard myself breathing. I heard Dunn breathing. I heard the kid crying. And I realized we were still alive somehow. Somehow. I turned back toward the surf and watched as another wave of soldiers stepped into the fire. And I knew this was only the beginning. I moved when my hands stopped shaking. Not before. Crawling felt like swimming through broken glass. Every inch forward was a war with the earth itself. Sand in my mouth. In my eyes. In every wound I didn't know I had yet. Dunn was just behind me, dragging his leg. Blood pouring into the sand like oil from a busted engine. He wasn't screaming, which was worse. He was quiet now. Too quiet. Almost there. I lied to him. I didn't know what there was anymore. The shingle? The dunes? The seawall? Maybe just another 5 seconds alive. We crossed a tangle of barbed wire half buried in sand. I didn't see it in time. Caught my sleeve. Tore the fabric. Tore my skin. Bright red soaked down my forearm. I gritted my teeth. Didn't stop. Above us, the bunker spat fire. Lead pouring down like rain with no mercy. Tracers streaked like comets. And every time I blinked, I expected to open my eyes in another world. We reached the shingle. A jagged, uneven stretch of crushed stone and twisted metal. Bodies already piled there. Some alive. Most not. I dropped to my stomach beside what used to be Lieutenant Harris. His mouth open like he was mid-command. Half his chest gone. The rest of him still warm. A hand clamped down on my shoulder. Done again. His face ghost white. Sweat streaking through the dirt. We're pinned. Man, we're not moving from here. I nodded, but I was looking past him. Across the beach. The sea was still red. Bodies floated like driftwood. Some face down. Some staring back at the sky with glass eyes that didn't blink. Incoming rounds screamed overhead, smashed into the sand just behind us. The shockwave slammed me forward, face first into gravel. Sand filled my nose, my ears. My teeth clicked hard together. I tasted blood. I didn't know if it was mine. We pushed further up the line, leapfrogging from corpse to corpse, using what was left of the dead as cover. I hated it, every second of it, but I did it, because the only other option was to die where I lay. Someone yelled behind us, "Bangalore! Get the Bangalore forward!" I turned. 2 guys with poles strapped to their backs were crawling toward the barbed wire. Explosives. The only way to blow a hole through this metal wall. I wanted to help, but I also didn't want to die. They passed us, and seconds later, they didn't exist anymore. Mortar hit dead on. Their bodies vanished into a cloud of smoke and red spray, and the only thing left was a piece of the Bangalore tube spinning end over end in the air. I ducked instinctively. Too late. The shrapnel sliced across the back of my neck, hot and sudden, like a slap made of fire. I screamed without sound. I clutched my rifle like it was a rope to sanity, slapped in a fresh clip with trembling fingers. The Garand pinged as it locked in, a sound that felt like control in a world that had none. I heard shouting. Real voices this time. Closer. Smoke grenades had finally landed right. Thick clouds billowing across the beach, giving us cover. Or at least the illusion of it. Men began moving. Again. Crawling. Sprinting. Dying. I watched a medic trying to drag someone by the straps. He got halfway before bullets stitched across both of them. They didn't even twitch. I turned away. Saw a squad assembling behind an upturned tank trap. One of them had a flamethrower strapped to his back, the nozzle trembling in his hands. They were going to assault the first pillbox. I started crawling toward them before I realized what I was doing. I didn't want to die alone. The man with the flamethrower looked younger than me, maybe 19. baby fat still on his cheeks. He looked up at me and nodded once. No fear in his eyes. Just focus. The sergeant counted down on his fingers. 3, 2, 1. We surged forward. The world collapsed into noise. Footsteps pounding. Screams echoing in my ears. Bullets snapped by so close I felt the heat of them. The flamethrower roared to life. Bright orange arcs that swallowed the opening of the pillbox in fire and screams. The smell hit us immediately. Burning flesh and rubber and hair. We kept moving. Grenades into the firing slits. Muffled blasts. The bunker shook. Smoke poured from the cracks. And then a silence. A kind of silence I'll never forget. We cleared the pillbox. What was left inside didn't look human anymore. I threw up behind a steel drum. Couldn't help it. Then I kept going. Because there were more bunkers ahead. Because this wasn't over. Because hell didn't end on the beach. It started here. My boots stuck in the sand with every step like the beach wanted to pull me under. My thighs burned, not from running, but from crawling, crouching, dragging my body over wreckage and blood-soaked grit for what felt like hours. The air was thicker now, not just with smoke, but with heat. Heat from fire, from explosions, from the sun finally breaking through the clouds like it was mocking us for still being alive. We moved past the first bunker, charred and silent. The flamethrower kid, Martinez, I think, was still staring at it. His hands trembling, face pale, like he could still hear the screaming from inside. I put a hand on his shoulder, not to say anything, just to remind him he wasn't alone. But we couldn't stop. Sarge barked orders again. Move up to the bluff. There's a trench line behind the dunes. We ran, or tried to. I was moving like an old man, each footstep forced, unsteady. Pain flaring in my shoulder from where the shrapnel grazed me earlier. Dunn was limping, his leg worse now. But he didn't say a word. We passed a crater with 3 men inside, 2 dead, 1 alive but bleeding bad from his thigh. He looked up at us, eyes wide, hand outstretched. We didn't stop. We couldn't. I mouthed, "I'm sorry." I don't even know if he saw. We pushed toward the dune. A narrow path cut into the sand, partially covered by debris and torn bodies. Machine gun fire cracked overhead, spraying the sand just behind us. We dove into the trench the second we saw it. Just a shallow ditch, maybe 4 feet deep, but it felt like paradise compared to the killing field behind us. Inside, there were more Americans, some crouched and breathing heavy, some wide-eyed and useless, others already dead, still clutching their rifles. One guy was missing most of his jaw. Another had his helmet pressed over a hole in his chest, as if that would stop the bleeding. "Anyone got morphine?" Someone shouted. No one answered. A lieutenant with blood on his rank bars pulled a map from a waterproof pouch, pointed at the ridge above us. "There's another pillbox covering this side. If we don't take it out, they'll wipe out every boat coming in." I nodded without thinking. Martinez looked at me, his eyes glassy now, but he still had the flamethrower on his back. Dunn muttered, "This is suicide." I said, "So's staying here." The lieutenant counted us, 6 men, maybe 7 if you included the one guy who hadn't spoken since we got in the trench. He was rocking back and forth, whispering names I didn't recognize. We moved again, up the side of the trench, low and fast. I could hear the machine gun before I saw it. This one dug deep into the ridge, hidden behind sandbags and wire. The second we peeked over the lip, it opened fire. The first man went down instantly, hit 3 times in the chest. Flung backwards like a rag doll, we ducked, pressed flat against the earth. Martinez crawling to the left to find a better angle. Bullets snapped inches above my head. One clipped my helmet and made my ears ring. I couldn't think. Just breathe. Breathe and move. A grenade bounced down the ridge and landed beside us. We threw ourselves away from it. Dunn pulling a kid down with him just in time, blast flinging dirt and body parts in every direction. I blinked, saw a man's foot lying next to me, still in its boot. I couldn't scream anymore. I didn't have the air for it. We returned fire, sporadic shots that barely scratched the bunker's defenses. Then Martinez stood, not all the way, but just enough. He pulled the nozzle forward, aimed, and lit the world on fire. A column of flame roared from the hose, bright, angry, alive. It hit the bunker's opening and poured inside. Screams followed, real ones, inhuman and raw. The firing stopped. The air filled with the thick stench of burning cloth and flesh and oil. Martinez stood there, the weapon still hissing, until the fuel tank sputtered empty. He dropped to his knees, hands still gripping the nozzle like he didn't realize it was over. We rushed the bunker. Inside was hell. The bodies didn't look like bodies anymore. We stepped around them, through them, because there was no other way. Beyond the bunker, the path opened into a higher ridge, lined with trenches, comms wires, spent shell casings. I took a deep breath. We were finally off the beach. But I didn't feel like we'd survived anything, only like we'd walked deeper into something worse. The ground changed under our boots. Less sand now, more dirt, churned up by boots and tank tracks and blood. Every step squelched like walking over rotten meat. We were off the beach. That was true. But I didn't feel safer. If anything, the silence was worse now, heavier, like something was waiting just over the next hill to finish what the machine guns started. Martinez didn't say a word. The flamethrower tank on his back was empty, useless, but he still carried it like he needed the weight to stay upright. Dunn's limp had gotten worse. He was pale, clammy, sweat soaking through his uniform like fever was burning through him from the inside out. "Sit down," I told him. He shook his head. "You sit down. I don't get back up." We kept moving. Smoke still rose from behind us. The beach now hidden by the dunes and the burnt husks of concrete pillboxes. But I could still hear it in my head. The screams, the gunfire, the ocean chewing on the dead. Ahead, a winding trench system cut through the bluffs, zigzagging between fortified nests and sandbagged corners. There were bodies in every corner. Germans, mostly. Some still clutching MP40s with stiff fingers. One had a picture of a woman in his pocket. I don't know why I noticed that, or why I kept it. Maybe just to remind myself he was human once. We moved in formation now. What was left of us? A handful of broken men with nothing to lose. The lieutenant didn't come with us. He caught a round behind the ear just before we breached the second line, dropped like his strings got cut. No drama. Just gone. We didn't stop. We couldn't. Each corner we turned felt like flipping a coin. Life or death, heads or tails. Sometimes we found nothing. Empty trenches with discarded gear and shattered helmets. Sometimes we found movement. A soldier crouched low, whispering in German, unaware of our approach. We didn't give them a chance. No time for questions. No time for hesitation. My bayonet went into a man's neck and came out warm. I remember the way he looked at me as he fell. Not hate. Not fear. Just surprise. He was young, maybe 20. Blonde hair stuck to his forehead, eyes wide and glassy. I didn't say sorry. I didn't pray. I just kept moving. Martinez covered the rear. Dunn stuck close to me. He kept muttering something under his breath, over and over. Not here. Not here. Not like this. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. We reached a fork in the trench, 2 paths, both shadowed, both death traps. We split. 2 and 2. I took the left path with Dunn. We crept forward, boots scraping softly on the planks laid across the mud. Every muscle in my body wound tight. We heard them before we saw them. German voices, frantic, angry. Orders shouted, boots slamming into the dirt. I raised my rifle, motioned for Dunn to hold. The corner came fast. I stepped out and fired on instinct. 2 men went down, one in the chest, one in the leg. Another turned his rifle toward me but never fired. Dunn's shot caught him clean through the temple. We advanced fast, swept through the bunker beyond the trench. It was a comm station. Radio still crackling, someone shouting in German on the other end. I shot the radio. It felt good. We gathered what we could, maps, rations, ammo. Then we heard yelling. Martinez's voice, farther down the other trench. We ran. Rounded the bend and saw chaos. A grenade had gone off too close. One of ours was down. Arm shredded, face black with soot and dirt. Martinez was dragging him clear, firing over his shoulder with a sidearm he must have picked up. 2 Germans behind a fallen log were laying down fire. One with a rifle, the other with an MG set on a tripod. We hit them from the flank. I fired 3 times, center mass, didn't wait to see them fall. Martinez slumped to the ground, panting, the wounded man moaning beside him. I knelt down, checked for bleeding, bones, anything still working. He was alive. Barely. "Medic!" I shouted, even though there were none. I tied a tourniquet. Tight enough he screamed. Martinez looked at me, eyes rimmed red, voice dry. He stepped on it. Pressure mine. I tried to stop him. "You did good," I said, but it sounded empty. We dragged him into the shell crater, used the walls for cover. It was getting darker now, not night, but smoke thickening with the heat, turning the sun into a dull red smear in the sky. We weren't done. The map we found said there was an artillery position at the top of the ridge, 6 guns pounding the beach every 2 minutes. If we didn't take them out, they'd keep killing every man coming off those boats. We locked eyes. No speeches, no plans, just action. We stood and climbed. The climb was steep, loose dirt and jagged rocks. Every step up came with a slide back. I dug my fingers into the earth like I was trying to pull myself out of a grave. Dunn coughed behind me, wet and sharp, blood in it this time. I didn't say anything, just kept going. Martinez hauled the wounded man across his shoulders, step by step like his legs didn't belong to him anymore. We reached the top of the incline just as another artillery shell screamed out from the trees beyond. The boom rolled through the ground like a heartbeat too big for the earth to hold. We hit the dirt and crawled the last stretch, belly low, hearts louder than gunfire. The trees were dense up here, pine and smoke and broken branches. And the guns. 6 of them. Howitzers. Parked in a semicircle just behind a timbered ridge, half dug into the hill, half shielded by sandbags. Men swarmed around them, German gunners in gray and black, shouting, loading, aiming. They didn't know we were here. Not yet. We dropped into a shallow ditch and watched them. The repetition of war. Fire, reload, adjust, fire again. Each shot meant more death down on the beach. Martinez looked at me. No words. I nodded. We split up. Moved like shadows. 1 step at a time. The crackle of underbrush under my knees sounding louder than the mortars. I took out the first guard with a knife. Quick and silent. His eyes went wide, then empty. I caught his body. Lowered him slow. Then I was behind the first gun. It was huge up close, metal hot from constant use. Shell casings littered the ground like brass bones. I pulled a grenade from my belt, yanked the pin, dropped it into the breach before anyone saw me. Ran. The explosion was thunder. The blast threw me into a tree. Bark splintered. Something cracked in my ribs. I couldn't breathe. Not right away. But I rolled over, lifted my rifle, started firing. The camp erupted into chaos. Germans scrambling, shouting, some firing into the woods blindly. Dunn appeared at the second gun, spraying with his bar. Men dropped. A loader screamed as his leg was torn open. Martinez came in from the flank, 1 last shot with his sidearm before he threw a satchel charge at the 3rd howitzer. Flames and smoke. One of the Germans charged him with a bayonet. I shot him in the back. 2 rounds. Didn't stop to watch him fall. Dunn was hit. Left arm this time. His scream was cut short as he dropped behind the wheel of the second gun. I ran to him, blood pouring from under his sleeve, pressed my palm hard against the wound. He growled through his teeth. "I can still shoot." So he did. We were down to 3 guns left. The Germans had regrouped near the 5th one, setting up a defense, yelling for support, dragging ammo crates to form a makeshift wall. Too many for us to take head on. Martinez looked wild now, smoke and sweat on his face, eyes wide and unfocused. "We go around!" he shouted over the chaos. We flanked again, through the trees, past the wreckage of the first 2 guns, bodies smoking, the air thick with the stink of burning oil and flesh. I spotted a mortar tube abandoned by a dead crew, grabbed it. Dunn found shells. We set it up fast, no training, just instincts and rage. First round missed, second round hit dead center. The crates exploded like a box of fireworks. German soldiers tossed into the air like dolls. We charged. It wasn't clean. Bayonets. Butts of rifles. Hands around throats. One of them bit me, right on the arm. I slammed his head into the gun's wheel until he went still. We secured the fifth gun. Martinez limped over to the last one. His flamethrower tank long gone, but his hands still steady. He found a grenade on a dead man's belt, pulled the pin with his teeth. He didn't even hesitate. He ran straight at the last crew. Bullets tore through him. 3, 4, 5. But he kept running, tossed the grenade, took the whole thing with him. The blast shattered the ridge, flame and shrapnel lighting up the trees like it was midday again. Silence after. Just smoke, drifting through torn branches. Just wind, brushing past my face like the hand of someone who'd already left. I stood over Martinez's body, what was left of it. My mouth was dry, my eyes burned. But I didn't cry. Dunn came up beside me, barely standing. We looked down the hill, saw the sea in the distance, still red, but quieter now. The guns were silent. The beach would live. We held the ridge until the sun started to fall. The sky turned this strange color, half blood, half ash, like the world couldn't decide if it was dying or just catching its breath. I sat next to Dunn, both of us propped against the wheel of the third howitzer, the metal still warm from fire. He was pale now, shaking, pressure bandage soaked through and through. I knew the signs. He was circling the edge. "I think I left part of my soul down there," he said, eyes locked on the distant shoreline. I didn't answer, because I think I did too. More men came up from the beach, reinforcements from a different sector, fresh faces, still whole, still thinking this was just the start of something glorious. They looked at us like ghosts. I didn't care. Let them see what this war really was. They asked about the guns. I pointed. They asked about our unit. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure we had one anymore. Martinez was gone. So was half the platoon. The others, scattered, buried or burnt. We were shadows now, crawling forward just because backward wasn't an option. We joined the next push, down through the woods, deeper inland, toward the nearest village marked on the map. Colville. It sounded soft, French, civilized. But all I saw when we got close was stone, smoke, and silence. The Germans had dug in again, sniper nests in chimneys, MGs behind walls, mines scattered like seeds waiting to bloom. A corporal I'd never seen before gave the order. Flank left, use the hedgerows for cover, sweep through the lower street. We moved in small groups, 4 men at a time. I took point with Dunn behind me, barely holding it together, but still moving, still breathing. Behind us was Murphy and Daniels, new replacements, maybe a week off the boat. They didn't talk much. That was good. We reached the first building, an old cafe maybe, glass shattered, door hanging by one hinge. Inside, overturned chairs, a half-burnt piano, bullet holes in the wallpaper, and blood. Lots of it. No bodies, just stains, slick and fresh. I signaled for them to hold, moved upstairs with my Garand tight in my grip. Second floor was clear. Almost. There was a girl, maybe 12, hiding in a cupboard, eyes too big for her face. She didn't cry, just stared. I lowered my rifle. She didn't move. I stepped back, waved Dunn up. He took one look and just nodded. We left her there. We had to. Outside, gunfire broke the quiet again. Sharp bursts, close, automatic. Daniel screamed. I spun. He was down, clutching his leg, blood spraying through his fingers. Murphy fired blindly down the alley, returning fire that came from somewhere we couldn't see. I dragged Daniels behind a wall, his face gray, lips trembling. "I don't want to die," he said. "You're not," I lied. I packed gauze into the wound, wrapped it tight, screamed for a medic. No one came. I turned the corner, spotted the muzzle flash, squeezed off 3 rounds. Missed. Fourth one found something. A body slumped behind the rubble. Rifle clattered to the ground. The silence returned. Too sudden. Too wrong. Murphy peeked out. "Clear?" "No such thing," I said. We moved house to house, checking windows, attics, cellars. In one room, I found a table still set for breakfast. Cups turned over, bread gone stale, jam dried into glass. The war didn't just kill people, it killed time. In the last building, we found 2 more Krauts. Young, scared. one holding a grenade, the other just shaking. They didn't fire. We didn't either. They raised their hands. We tied them up, blindfolded them, left them in the back room. I don't know if they were even soldiers. I just didn't care anymore. Outside, smoke curled from a farmhouse on the hill. Shell hit it clean, fire still chewing on the roof. We regrouped in the square. What was left of us? 10 men, maybe less. I sat on the curb, boots in the gutter, rifle across my knees. The church bell above us was cracked, but it didn't fall. I looked at Dunn. He looked back. We didn't say a word, because we knew. This village wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the next fight. Night fell like a curtain soaked in blood. No ceremony. No quiet moment. Just a sudden dark. The kind of dark that swallowed sound. That made your own breathing feel like shouting. We set up a perimeter in the town square. Sandbags dragged from the wreckage. Ammo crates stacked into cover. Bodies used where sandbags ran out. Someone lit a cigarette. Someone else cursed them for it. Too bright, too easy to see. But no one put it out. Not tonight. Dunn sat with his back against the church wall. Eyes half-lidded. Bleeding slowing now, but still there. The ground beneath him had turned a darker shade. I sat next to him, shared the last of a canteen. It tasted like rust and cordite. "They keep coming," he muttered. "They always do." We didn't have a medic, didn't have a radio. Just rifles, broken sleep, and the weight of what we'd done pushing down on our spines like wet concrete. The replacements, Murphy, Daniels, a few more. I didn't learn their names. I didn't want to. Not yet. Too many ghosts already clinging to my sleeves. We took shifts through the night. 2 hours watching, 2 hours pretending to sleep. I watched first. The sky was clear, full of stars I didn't want to look at. Somewhere across the channel, home was sleeping peacefully under that same sky. But here there were whispers in the dark. At 0300, I heard footsteps in the alley behind the butcher shop. I clicked off the safety. Finger on the trigger. Heart like a jackhammer. Then a figure moved into the open, slow, arms up, whispering in English. "Friendly! Don't shoot!" I didn't lower the rifle. Not right away. He stepped into the moonlight. American helmet, face covered in soot and blood, hands shaking. "I'm with Baker." They got separated on the ridge. Germans took the rest of the platoon. We brought him in. He didn't stop shaking. Didn't blink much either. He said they'd been ambushed outside Colleville. Machine guns from the trees. Mortars. Screams. He was the only one who made it back. His name was Fields. Corporal, maybe. Didn't matter. Now he was one of us. Just another stray dog who crawled out of hell and kept going. An hour later, we heard them. Engines, far off. Not tanks. Not yet. Trucks, maybe. Half-tracks. Then boots. Hundreds. The ground trembled. I woke Dunn. Murphy. Daniels. Set the firing lines. Passed out the last of the grenades. Fields sat in the shadows, clutching his carbine like a lifeline, rocking slightly, whispering something under his breath. I checked my rifle, slammed in a fresh clip, and waited. First contact came fast. A flare went up, red and ugly, painting the square in light and long shadows. Then came the shouting. German orders barked like hounds loosed from the leash. We opened fire. Our bullets caught the first wave as they came through the southern road, figures silhouetted against the flare light. They dropped, screamed, kept coming. Return fire peppered our position. Glass shattered, stone chipped. Dunn cursed as another round grazed his thigh. Fields went down. Not from a bullet. He just collapsed, curled into himself like a child. I didn't have time to check him. More krauts came from the west alley. Close quarters now. Grenades thrown over walls, bouncing near our boots. One went off behind me. Heat slammed into my back like a hammer, ears ringing, vision swimming. Murphy grabbed me, dragged me behind the church rubble. "You good?" I coughed, nodded, lied. We kept firing. The flare burned out. Dark again. Voices echoed. Footsteps shuffled. Somewhere a man screamed and didn't stop. I pushed forward, low, fast, breath short, flanked through the store ruins, came out behind 2 Germans reloading behind a barrel. Shot them both. Didn't think. Just moved. Back in the square, I found Dunn pinned down, bleeding, face streaked in soot, barely conscious. I dragged him behind a burned-out jeep, held his rifle steady while he fired with one arm. We held, somehow. By dawn, they were gone. Smoke still drifted through the streets. Broken glass glittered in the first light like frost. Fields hadn't moved. Murphy checked his pulse, shook his head. Daniels had a burn across half his face, couldn't talk. Just stared at nothing with one working eye. Dunn was unconscious. And me? I just sat there, hands on my knees, rifle across my lap, watching the sun rise over a town that wasn't home, over men who weren't whole. We'd survived another night, but I wasn't sure we'd survived ourselves. I don't remember standing up. One moment I was sitting there, blood crusting on my uniform. The next I was walking, feet moving on their own, boots heavy with mud and ash. The town was silent now, too silent, like it had swallowed all the screams from the night before and buried them in the stone. Smoke still rose from the church roof. The bell tower cracked, leaning like it had been wounded too. Dunn was still out cold, pulse weak but steady. Murphy and Daniels were patching what they could with ripped shirts and burnt morphine sticks. I needed to move. We'd radioed command hours ago. Nothing came through. No reinforcements, no orders. We were on our own again. I took Fields' carbine. He wasn't going to need it. Then I headed toward the north edge of town, past the bakery that no longer had a roof, past the alley where we'd dragged the wounded last night, past the blood trail that led to no body. I found the edge of the hedgerows, fields beyond them. Quiet, golden with dawn mist hanging low. It could have been beautiful, if not for the dead man hanging from the fence. German, throat slit, eyes still open. The flies were already there, buzzing like a funeral hymn. I climbed the fence, moved into the fields, step by step. I didn't know why. Instinct maybe, or maybe I just didn't want to sit still long enough to feel anything. Past the first row of trees, I found the remains of a mortar team. Americans, blown to pieces, half covered by leaves like the earth was trying to hide what it couldn't forget. I took ammo from what was left of their packs, said nothing, kept walking. The sun crept higher, the mist lifted, and with it came the stench, smoke, blood, and something else. Something human and awful. I heard movement, dropped low. 2 Germans, walking the road just beyond the trees, talking, laughing, rifles slung casually. They didn't know I was there. I waited. Breath held, rifle steady. Then they stopped. One lit a cigarette. I took the shot. The first one fell before he exhaled. The second didn't even run, just froze. I shot him too. The silence after felt wrong. I moved again, quick, low, watching every tree line, every shadow. Then I saw it. A farmhouse, still standing, shutters closed, doors chained. I crept closer. Blood smeared across the threshold. Inside, something moved. I raised my rifle, kicked the door. Empty. Just animals. Goats. Chickens. 1 cow. And a man. Old. French. Kneeling in the corner with a rosary in his hand, whispering fast and desperate. He looked at me like I was a ghost. I lowered my weapon. He pointed toward the cellar. I moved slow. Opened the hatch. Inside were 5 people. A woman, 2 kids, and 2 more old men. They flinched at the light. At me. I spoke softly. English. Then broken French. They didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. I nodded, closed the hatch, covered it again. Outside, I sat on the step, watched the fields, smoked the last of Fields' cigarettes, and waited. An hour later, I saw them coming. Figures down the road. American helmets. A full squad. Maybe 2. Finally. Reinforcements. They swept in with clean uniforms and confident steps. Young faces. Untouched eyes. I briefed their lieutenant. He nodded, thanked me, called me sergeant, even though I wasn't one. I didn't correct him. We headed back together. Back into the town. Back through the smoke and silence. Back to Dunn. He was awake. Barely. Smiled when he saw me. "You look like hell," he rasped. "So do you." We didn't hug, didn't speak more, just looked at each other like men who'd been somewhere no one else had. Murphy came up beside me, asked, "What now?" I looked around. At the new faces, at the broken walls, at the rising sun. And I said the only thing I could. Now we keep going. Because the war's not done with us yet. The new guys thought the worst was over. They moved like they were walking into a training exercise. Rifles high, chatter low, eyes scanning but never really seeing. I didn't blame them. They hadn't been on the beach, hadn't pulled pieces of their friends out of sandbags, hadn't watched a man burn alive and keep running. They would learn. We regrouped near the church. The new lieutenant pacing in the street with his map unfolded, pointing at lines and names that meant nothing to the dead. He said the next objective was a ridge 3 miles east. Something strategic. Something to secure before the Germans fell back. I didn't care what it was called. All I knew was it would be soaked in blood before nightfall. We moved out just after noon, columns of boots hitting cobblestone like a heartbeat trying too hard to stay steady. Dunn insisted on coming. I told him to stay behind. He said, "You go without me. I'll shoot you in the leg and follow anyway." So I handed him back his rifle. We moved through the outskirts. Hedgerows thicker here, paths narrow and winding. The sun beat down like it hated us, heat rolling off the dirt in waves. Fields of wheat waved lazily on either side, peaceful, hiding places for death. We reached the edge of the woods by mid-afternoon, just past a burned-out wagon and a horse that had rotted into bones and hide. The air changed in the trees, cooler, still, and heavy. Birds didn't sing here. The lieutenant raised a hand. We stopped. I crouched low, scanned the tree line. Movement. Not much, but enough. I raised my rifle just as the first shot cracked through the woods. It hit one of the new guys. Gut shot. He fell screaming, clutching his stomach like he was trying to hold his insides in. Then all hell broke loose. Automatic fire ripped through the trees. MGs, close. Too close. We dove for cover. Roots, ditches, anything. The trees lit up with muzzle flashes. Our return fire was scattered, panicked. Daniels was down, bleeding from his shoulder. Murphy yelled something, dragged him back behind a stump. I spotted the first MG nest, half covered in brush, camouflaged too well. I pointed, shouted, "Left flank, left!" No one heard. Too loud, too fast. I broke cover, sprinted low, ducking branches and splinters. Bullets chased my shadow, each one kissing the bark beside me. Closer, closer. I hit the ground behind a log, heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. Crawled forward, 1 foot at a time. Grenade in hand. Pulled the pin. Tossed it. Silence. Then the boom. Screams. I rushed in. Shot 1. 2 more scattered, one with his hands up. I didn't stop to check, just kept moving. More nests up ahead. The squad was spread thin, pinned in different pockets of trees. The lieutenant was gone. Maybe dead. Maybe just smart enough to crawl away. I found Dunn behind a boulder, rifle propped up, one eye swollen shut, blood down his neck. "I see him," he said, voice flat. "Where?" He pointed with his chin. "Up the ridge, behind the rocks. One with a scope." A sniper. I slid next to him, took his rifle, aimed. Found the glint, glass catching the light just enough. Squeezed the trigger. The glint vanished. The fire slackened, but only for a moment. A mortar landed 20 feet away, dirt and smoke exploding around us, shrapnel slicing through the trees like knives. One hit Murphy, tore his calf open like paper. He didn't scream, just gritted his teeth and kept pulling the trigger. We regrouped what was left, 6 of us, pushed up the ridge under cover of smoke grenades. I don't remember the climb, just the way my lungs burned, just the taste of copper in my mouth, just the weight of everything I'd seen dragging behind me like a shadow that wouldn't let go. We reached the top, overran the last nest with bayonets and boots and rage. When it was done, I looked at my hands, covered in blood. Some mine, some not. Didn't matter anymore. The ridge was ours. But the price? It never stopped growing. The ridge held nothing but smoke, silence, and the kind of stillness that only comes after men stop screaming. Bodies lay in heaps, twisted shapes, half covered in leaves and dirt. American. German. It didn't matter now. They all looked the same once the light left their eyes. I stood at the top, chest heaving, rifle heavy in my hands like it had absorbed everything I'd done with it, everything I couldn't take back. Dunn sat against a tree trunk, hand pressed to his ribs, blood leaking slow and steady. He smiled at me, the kind of smile you give a man when you both know the truth and aren't ready to say it out loud. "You think that was the last one?" he asked, voice dry like dead leaves. I didn't answer, because we both knew better. Behind us, the trees still smoked. The path we came up was littered with shell craters and footprints that led nowhere. Daniels was being carried by Murphy now, half conscious, eyes rolling back every few seconds. He wasn't going to make it to the next hill. We all knew it. The sun began to dip, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the ridge. That golden light. It had no right to look so beautiful over a field of corpses. The radio finally crackled. Static, then a voice. "All units, hold position. Reinforcements en route. Rendezvous at Grid 7 Bravo." Reinforcements. Too late. Always too late. We set up perimeter like we still had something to defend. Stacked rifles. Laid out the dead in rows when we could. Dragged the rest into shade. I sat with Dunn, passed him the last of the water. He drank, wiped his mouth with a hand that shook more than it should have. "You remember that kid? Back on the boat?" he asked suddenly. Rosary in his hand, kept praying like the words would stop the bullets. "Yeah," I said. I was laughing at him. He looked at me, eyes sharp despite the blood. "I'm not laughing now." None of us were. Murphy sat a few yards off, staring at his boots like they held some secret. Field's dog tags hung from his belt now. He'd picked them up after we pulled what was left of him out of the square. We'd all collected something. A patch, a name, a wound. The war gave us plenty. But it took more. It took quiet. It took sleep. It took the pieces that made you feel like a person instead of just another set of boots in the mud. As the sky darkened, we lit no fires. Just sat in silence, watching the tree line, listening for ghosts. And when the stars came out, I finally laid back, eyes to the sky, rifle across my chest. The air was cool now. Soft, almost. But the ground beneath me was still wet, and I didn't want to ask why. Dunn mumbled something before drifting off. Maybe a prayer. Maybe just words to keep the dark from closing in too tight. I thought about home. About my mother's kitchen. About the sound of screen doors slamming in summer. About my brother's laugh. And I wondered if any of those things still existed. Or if I dreamed them before the beach took my name. Somewhere out there, across that ocean, people were sleeping under clean sheets, untouched by what we'd become. I wasn't jealous. I just hoped they stayed that way. The wind shifted, the smoke cleared a little, and for the first time in days I saw the moon. Full. Indifferent. I whispered to no one. "We're still here." Then I closed my eyes and listened for morning. The morning didn't come with peace. It came with the sound of boots crunching over gravel. New voices. Distant at first, then closer. Sharper. American. Reinforcements. I opened my eyes to a sky that had turned from black to gray, and for a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I felt the weight of the rifle on my chest, smelled the blood on my sleeve, heard Dunn coughing softly beside me, and it all came rushing back. The ridge, the trees, the screams. Murphy stood at the edge of the perimeter, waving to the approaching column. A fresh platoon. Clean helmets, unscuffed boots, too much noise in their movements, like they hadn't learned yet that sound gets you killed out here. A captain walked up, offered a salute I didn't return. He glanced around at the bodies, the burned-out guns, the craters still smoking. "Hell of a fight," he said. I nodded. That was all. He looked at Dunn, then Murphy, then at Daniels, still unconscious on a stretcher made from wire and branches. "Where's your commanding officer?" the captain asked. I looked him dead in the eyes. "You're looking at him." We didn't waste time on formalities. There was still too much to do. They brought rations, water, bandages. I handed them out without words. My hands moved on instinct now. Grab, pass, wrap, tie off. Blood didn't faze me anymore. We buried the bodies as best we could. Some in shallow graves marked with helmets on rifles. Others wrapped in ponchos, dragged under the trees where the sun couldn't find them. Martinez was among them. We didn't say much, just stared at the patch of earth and let the silence speak. Dunn limped around on a makeshift crutch. Wouldn't lie down. Said if he stopped moving, he'd stop breathing too. I believed him. The captain asked for a report. I gave it to him in short bursts. Clipped, like it was someone else's story. A list of actions, positions, casualty counts. He didn't ask how many of those names I remembered. I didn't offer. Orders came down around noon. We were to move out again. East. Always east. They'd taken the beach, the ridge, the town. Now came the push inland. Through farmland, through ruins, through whatever was left of France before the war burned it into something unrecognizable. We marched slow. No columns. Just clusters of men shuffling forward, rifles resting on shoulders, eyes low. I walked next to Dunn, Murphy behind us. Daniel strapped to a makeshift cart, pulled by two guys who didn't know him but carried him like they did. We passed villages torn in half, walls blown out, clothes still hanging in closets, bread burnt to black in ovens that hadn't cooled in days. People began to appear, the French, peeking from windows, creeping from cellars, children clutching mothers, old men with hollow eyes. Some cried, some just stared. One woman offered me a flower. I didn't take it. I couldn't. What was I supposed to do with beauty now? That night we bivouacked near an orchard. The air smelled like rot and apples. The sky was too clear. I hated it. A new guy, Miller, asked me how long I'd been out here. I said, since the ocean tried to kill me. He didn't laugh. Good. I sat alone for a while, rifle across my knees, hands dirty, nails black, face numb. My reflection in a canteen looked like someone I'd fought against, not someone I remembered. And then I heard it. A piano, soft. Somewhere down the hill, in a ruined house, someone was playing. One note at a time, slow, careful, like they were remembering how. It wasn't perfect, but it was human. And it broke me. I didn't cry. Not exactly. But something inside me cracked open, like I'd held my breath since Omaha. And only now remembered how to exhale. Dunn sat next to me. Didn't say a word. He just listened. And for one brief, impossible moment, the war felt far away. We moved again at dawn. No orders, no trumpets. Just the same quiet shuffle. Boots pressing into mud. Rifles slung low, eyes dead ahead. The orchard faded behind us, and with it, the sound of the piano. Like a dream we'd all agreed not to talk about. Now it was just fog and fences. Dew on the grass. Silence before another storm. The lieutenant from the new unit tried to take charge, talked like he still believed in tactics, flanking maneuvers, fire sectors, precision. I didn't argue. But I watched the tree lines, not the map, because that's where the war always came from. The edges, the shadows. About 3 miles out we found a roadblock, makeshift, logs and wire across the gravel path. Fresh footprints. Cigarette butts still burning. "They're close," Murphy said, crouching low. He was right. First shot came from the barn to our left, cracked loud, sharp, a sniper round, missed by inches. We scattered. Dove for cover. Trenches by the road. The ditch. Behind the burned-out husk of a truck. Bullets snapped over our heads, carving through the branches above like scissors through silk. Dunn cursed beside me, dragged himself behind a low stone wall. His crutch was gone, lost it in the sprint. "I liked that stick," he muttered, breathing hard. We returned fire, sporadic, blind, trying to find the shooter in the barn window. Murphy called out, "Second nest! On the ridge!" I turned. There it was. Another MG-42. High ground, clean shot. Bad news. The lieutenant hesitated. So I didn't. I grabbed a smoke grenade, pulled the pin, tossed it across the road. Gray clouds bloomed like ghosts in the air. Gave us maybe 10 seconds of chaos. I sprinted across the open path, low and fast. Heard the rounds chewing through the trees just behind me. Made it to the other side. Circled up the ridge with 2 men behind me. New guys. No names yet. We came up behind the nest. Fast, close quarters. I shot the first crowd in the spine. He arched backward and never made a sound. The second turned and screamed. One of the new guys bayoneted him in the gut, twisted, shoved. Then it was over. Just like that. We pushed down toward the barn. Murphy's team already breached it. The sniper was dead. Still holding the rifle, face calm, like he hadn't expected it to end like this. We regrouped. No one cheered. Not even relief anymore. Just motion. One of the new guys puked behind a wheelbarrow. No one said a word. We pressed on, through fields thick with morning fog and the smell of turned earth. That's when we heard the church bell. Faint, far, too clean, too deliberate. We stopped. No one spoke. Another ring. Same interval. Like a signal. "I don't like that," Dunn said. His voice was flat, dry, tired of warnings. Neither did I. The lieutenant said push forward, that it was just a bell. I said, "You go first." He didn't. We approached slow, every step tight with tension. The path narrowed between 2 stone walls. Too narrow. Too easy. I smelled fuel. Then I saw the tripwire. "Stop!" I shouted. Too late. One of the new guys stepped through. The world exploded. Pressure slammed into my chest, threw me backward into the dirt, ears ringing, vision swimming, smoke and fire and parts of men where no parts should be. The road was gone. Just a crater. Just screams. I crawled, dragged myself toward Dunn's voice, toward Murphy's shouting. The lieutenant was gone, pieces maybe. The guy who tripped the wire? There was nothing left to find. We pulled who we could out of the wreck, 3 men alive, all of them screaming or silent in the wrong way. Blood soaked the earth like it belonged there. And the bell kept ringing, same rhythm, same mockery. I stood up, grabbed my rifle, and started walking. No more caution, no more flanks, just forward, toward that sound, because if the devil was ringing the bell, then I was going to answer. I walked through smoke like it was fog on a cold morning back home. Except this fog smelled like burnt metal and bone. The bell kept tolling. Steady. Patient. Like it was counting the steps between who I used to be and what I was becoming. I passed the crater, where the road used to be, where the lieutenant used to stand. Now just scorched earth and shredded canvas. No bodies, just parts. Dunn limped after me, his arm around Murphy's shoulder. Neither of them said a word. We weren't following orders anymore. We were following the sound, the rhythm, the thing that had taken too much from us to ignore. We moved up the hill, step by step, past the tree line, through the scattered ruins of an old farm. And then we saw it. The church. Small. Crooked. Slanted with age. A cracked bell tower looming over the edge of a ridge like it was ashamed to still be standing. The front doors were open. Too open. A rope hung from the bell tower, swaying gently in the breeze. But no wind touched the trees. No birds. No life. I raised my hand, halted the others, listened. A faint creak, wood on stone inside. We moved in, tight formation, rifles raised. The pews were overturned, smashed in places, stained dark where blood had pooled and dried. Candles still burned on the altar, even though the windows had shattered. Glass everywhere, crunching under our boots. Someone had written on the wall. Charcoal. Words in German. I couldn't read all of it, just one phrase that stuck. Erlösung durch Feuer, salvation through fire. We heard it again, that creak from above. I looked up, a rope. No, not just a rope. A man, hanging, German uniform, eyes open, swollen. His boots turned slowly in the stale air. Murphy whispered, "What the hell happened here?" And that's when the shooting started. Not from outside, from beneath. Trapdoor behind the altar burst open. 2 Germans rose up fast, automatic weapons blazing. One of the new guys went down instantly, throat hit, gurgling as he dropped his rifle and grabbed nothing. We fired back, chaos in the echo, bullets ripping through ancient wood in sacred silence. One German fell. The other tried to retreat down the hole. Murphy lunged, tackled him, and they both went crashing below. I reached the altar. Fired once. Missed. Fired again. Blood on the stone steps. Dunn covered me from the doorway, returning fire at someone outside, shouting warnings we didn't have time to hear. I followed Murphy down into the dark. The stairs were steep, slick with mold and something thicker. The basement, cold, damp, foul, looked like it had been used for storage once. Now it was a bunker. Maps on the wall, crates of ammo, a small radio still humming, and bodies. 3 more Germans. Dead. Fresh. Murphy stood over one, blood on his knuckles, chest heaving. "He pulled a knife," he said, voice shaking. "I didn't—" He didn't finish the sentence. I didn't ask him to. We searched the room fast. Found documents, maps marked in red, notes written in code. Intel they'd been hoarding. They knew we were coming. Had for days. I found one photograph taped to the wall, an aerial shot of Omaha Beach, dated a week before we landed. They'd been ready. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took it and shoved it in my pack. We climbed back up. Dunn had cleared the outside, 2 more Germans down, rifle smoking in his lap. He looked older than before, all of us did. I looked at the man hanging in the tower. A message. A warning. Or maybe just a ritual they didn't finish in time. We rigged the church. C4 from the engineers who didn't make it past the beach. No prayers, no second thoughts, just flame. When the bell fell, it didn't ring. It shattered. And we walked away without looking back. The sound of the bell breaking followed us for miles. Or maybe it just echoed in our heads, some part of it ringing behind our eyes every time we blinked. We didn't talk. Not really. Dunn limped in silence. Murphy walked like every step was heavier than the last. I carried what was left of the intel. The photograph. The coded maps. But none of it felt like a victory. Not after what we'd seen. Not after what we'd done. The road ahead was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't trust you back. Fields opened wide now. Yellowed by heat. Rimmed by distant trees that all looked like they were holding something behind their backs. Somewhere beyond those trees, there was another objective. Another push. Another town to bleed over. I didn't care. I just wanted to keep moving. Because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and there wasn't room for that anymore. We passed an overturned truck, charred black, frame twisted like a dying animal. Inside was a man, half melted to the wheel, helmet fused to his skull. Murphy stared at him for a second too long. I said, "Keep walking." He did. At the crest of the next hill we saw smoke, low and thick, not fresh but not old either. We crouched behind the ridge, binoculars out. The ruins of a village lay below, stone houses collapsed, a barn still smoldering, the smell of rot drifting up like a warning. Movement. Civilians. 3. Maybe 4. A child. A woman. 2 older men. One of them dragged a cart, covered in blankets. I knew what was under them before we got close. We approached slow, hands raised, no rifles aimed. The woman spoke in French, soft, trembling. She said they'd been hiding for days. Said the Germans had passed through, taken everything. Left only bodies and silence. She pulled back the blanket. 2 children. Still. Not even blood. Just still. The girl, maybe 5 years old, still held a doll. Murphy dropped to his knees. I turned away. The old man pointed toward the church at the center of the ruins. Said they were still inside. More Germans. Maybe 10. Maybe more. I didn't need to ask what they'd done. The woman's eyes said enough. We left the civilians in the trees. Told them not to come back until the smoke stopped. We approached the church through the back. Through gardens turned to graves. Through courtyards that stank of death. Inside, we found them. 8 soldiers. Drunk. Laughing. They didn't see us at first. Didn't hear us. We fired without warning. Close. Cruel. Efficient. One tried to run. We shot him in the back. Another reached for a grenade. We shot him before his fingers closed. The last one begged. I didn't fire. Dunn did. And then there was silence. Real silence. We cleared the building. No traps. No survivors. No excuses. Murphy sat down against the wall. buried his face in his hands, didn't speak. Outside, the sun was setting again. Another day gone. Another place turned to ashes. I stood in the doorway and watched the sky turn red. And all I could think was, there's nothing left to burn. We didn't leave right away. We stayed until the fire burned low in the church, until the roof collapsed inward and the smoke rose straight into the sky like some kind of offering. None of us spoke. We just sat. Dunn was bleeding again, the wound on his side torn open from the last push. He wrapped it himself. Didn't even flinch. Murphy hadn't moved in almost an hour. Just sat there with his hands on his knees, staring at the blood drying on his boots like it had something to say. I paced, back and forth, rifle across my chest. Heartbeat slow, too slow. I think that's what war does to you. It stretches time in the wrong places, makes hours pass like minutes, and moments last forever. We buried the civilians outside the village walls. No ceremony, no words, just a patch of earth and a few stones stacked on top. The doll we left with the girl. We couldn't take it, wouldn't dare, wouldn't. At dusk, a runner arrived from command. Thin kid, fresh face, uniform still clean. He looked at us like we weren't real, like he couldn't tell if we were ghosts or men or something in between. "Orders," he said, voice cracking. "Fall back to Hill 317. Regroup for the next advance." Next advance. The words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. I took the papers, folded them, didn't look. We knew what came next. Another hill, another ridge, another village with more names than bodies left to say them. We walked. Single file. No formation. No chatter. Just boots dragging through the dust like they were pulling the weight of every man we'd lost since the ocean swallowed our first steps. The land blurred into shades of gray. Sky and dirt and trees all melted together in a fog of memory. Somewhere behind us, a dog barked once, sharp and sudden. Dunn looked back. I didn't. We reached Hill 317 just after dark. The camp was already half set. Tents pitched, trenches dug shallow, fires low. No one laughed. A few men nodded at us as we passed. No one asked where we came from. No one had to. They could smell it on us. The powder, the smoke, the blood. We took a spot near the edge of the hill. Flat ground, soft grass, no cover. Didn't matter. We didn't plan on sleeping. Murphy cleaned his rifle. Dunn leaned against a rock, one leg stretched out, breath ragged but steady. I sat down and looked at the sky. No stars tonight, just cloud and cold, and the kind of quiet that settles in when the worst part of you has already died and no one's told the rest yet. I pulled the photograph from my pack, the aerial shot of Omaha, creased and stained and almost torn in half. I held it in my lap, not looking at the beach, but at the edges, the corners, the places the war hadn't touched yet in that frame. And I whispered, "I remember the sound of the water." Murphy looked up. Dunn opened his eyes. I said it again, quieter. "I remember the sound of the water, when it wasn't filled with screams." They didn't answer, but they understood. Because that's what we all were now. The ones who remembered. The ones who crossed the sea and never really came back. The ones who crawled through smoke and salt and fire and kept going long after the war had any reason to let us live. And when morning came, we stood, picked up our rifles, and walked toward this next silence waiting to be filled with gunfire. If this story stayed with you, if you felt the weight of the mud, the smoke, the silence between gunshots, then help us keep these voices alive. Like, subscribe, and walk with us through World War II. Not from above, but from the dirt, through the eyes of the ones who bled in it.